Man, I'm really struggling with this. I knew it was gonna be hard. Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I will be reviewing The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So I picked up this book basically blind. I had seen it had a lot of hype on BookTube, but it was mostly through other people's TBRs and they didn't really know anything about it, so I figured I would just pick it up and try it out, and I wasn't expecting a whole lot. It's a pretty short book. It's only, I think, 280 pages, so I really wasn't expecting a whole lot out of this besides, you know, a good time. And this book is incredible. I'm just going to start now and say it is a 5-star read, which was not what I had expected to come from this. I connected with this book in a way that I think I'm going to struggle verbalizing throughout this review. I'm looking forward to the challenge. And I do highly, highly recommend this. I am going to jump kind of straight into a more spoilery review. Because this is such a hyped up book, I think a lot of people have already read it. And honestly, I think knowing spoilers about this book isn't going to take away from your enjoyment of the book if you are someone who is going to connect with it. If you're not going to connect with it, not knowing spoilers isn't going to do anything for you anyways. But I think had I known the entire plot of this book beforehand, I don't think it would have changed any of my thoughts on it. And I think if you haven't read this book and you do want to go in completely blind, then I'll check you later. If you're not convinced yet and you want to see my thoughts, there will be spoilers, but I do not think the spoilers will ruin your enjoyment of this novel. So kind of the short little synopsis, our main character is Nora Seed, and she is just not enjoying her life anymore. So she decides to get really drunk, post some depressing stuff on social media, and then take a bunch of pills. So basically she decides to end her life. But I think, as is the case with most times people take pills, it doesn't kill her right away, obviously, and it launches her into this semi-quantum state, Schrodinger's cat thing, and she wakes up in what's called the Midnight Library and now has the chance to look at a book of regrets from her life and look at all sorts of different books that hold her lives where she made different choices. Obviously, the premise of this is incredible in itself. It was kind of funny because I had read Dark Matter, I think about a month ago, and it is a fairly similar premise to Dark Matter. Dark Matter is just more kind of straight up sci-fi, and I guess this is more like speculative fiction bordering on like fantasy almost. So I think the way the author of this book uses this trope as opposed to Dark Matter, I think this allows for a lot more of kind of a character study. You get to see Nora experience all these different lives and how the regrets she had held in her root life really aren't something that she should regret at all, because as she's living these different lives, she realizes that they weren't as great as she thought they would be. That's a little synopsis. I am now going to jump into characters. So you mostly focus on Nora as a character. She's kind of the one constant that we see through all of these different lives and choices that she's making, from the root life to the actual Midnight Library to the different branch lives that she goes in and experiences. She starts out as kind of, I guess, what some would call a mid-30s screw up. She grew up with a lot of opportunity. She was a national champion swimmer when she was young, but decided to give that up. She almost had a record deal in a band with her and her brother. She was, you know, really intelligent and wanted to go into climate research and glaciology in Norway. And also The other main sticking point is she had previously been engaged to a man and had, you know, kind of that opportunity of, you know, settling down with someone she loved at the time and having a family and whatnot. So it's really fascinating to see. I mean, I don't know if all of us can relate to having that much opportunity of, you know, greatness, but I think all of us can relate a little bit to the what ifs. What if I had studied something different in college? What if I had dated different people? What if whatever. So I think that aspect of Nora's character is something that, even though, you know, I didn't grow up a world-class swimmer and I never had the chance of going to the Olympics, I can definitely relate to her struggle, specifically when it comes to fields of study. So she had been interested in climate change and glaciology. She ended up studying philosophy, and so she does experience a world where she studied glaciology and went to Norway on a research ship and did that whole thing, and realized that it really wasn't her life because it wasn't a choice that she made. And with each life you see her inhabit, the author does a really good job of showing her internal and external growth with that. So I think it really hit me deep. Like I said, I didn't grow up with the same type of opportunities Nora had, but there was definitely, you know, things in my life where I could have done things differently and ended up with a very different life that I'm living now. And would I enjoy that life more? Would I enjoy that life less? And I guess I've always kind of lived under the philosophy that everything happens for a reason. All the small things I did led to the life I'm living now, and I am enjoying that. Unlike Nora, I am enjoying my life right now. But I guess there's always still that kind of nagging in the back of your head of, what if I had done something different? What if I had pursued a different degree? So I think a lot of people can connect to this, especially Nora is obviously very multifaceted. She's an athlete, she's a scholar, she's, you know, had some aspiration of having a family, and I think it's a fact of life that you're just not going to be able to pursue everything. I think it's just the nature of the beast. We have limited time, we have limited resources. You don't have the chance to do everything that might be an interest or a passion, and you have to kind of settle somewhere. And there's always the thought of, did I prioritize the right things at the right time? I'm getting way too into my head now. I'm going to move on to some of the other characters. We kind of see the next main character, I guess we see, is the librarian herself, Mrs. Elm. So she's not really she is a real life character in Nora's root life, but in the context of the Midnight Library, she is kind of a figment of Nora's imagination as well as the library as a whole. And she helps direct Nora through the library somewhat. So it is kind of interesting to have a character that is guiding the main character, but it is a figment of the main character's imagination, if that makes sense. But she's fun, she's kind of snarky, she's a good time. The other character we see is Nora's ex-fiance Dan, and he obviously plays different roles in each life. In one life, him and Nora are actually married and they own a pub together. Turns out he's not as great as Nora had been romanticizing him to be. And in other lives, they know each other somewhat, and he's texting her and wants her back, even though in the married life he took her for granted and didn't really appreciate her. And then in other lives, they don't know each other at all. The other character we see a couple times is Hugo. So he is in the same predicament as Nora, except his brain is interpreting this semi-quantum state as a video rental store instead of a library. So they see each other when Nora is when Nora is in the glaciology life, he figures out what she is because he's been doing this for many, many years and kind of knows the signs of somebody going through this. And so he kind of info dumps on her as to what exactly is happening. And his theory is, like I said, that they are stuck in this place between life and death, and their brain is interpreting this Schrodinger's cat experiment as either a library or a video store, and it allows them to experience the same point in time through a multitude of universal dimensions. I'm not a quantum physicist. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. But basically, his theory is that the time that they die, the time that they not quite die is the point in time in which they are allowed to experience all lives at once. Obviously, our brains cannot comprehend that much information, and the Midnight Library or his video rental store is kind of how their brain rationalizes what they're experiencing. So I think that's pretty much Hugo's point, is to be that info dump. But he is an interesting character in himself in that he has experienced all these different lives, and he's kind of just having fun now, just jumping between all these different lives. But he started out as a very different character than Nora. He didn't kill himself. I think he was being operated on for something, and the operation is obviously not going super well. The other character we see a little bit is Izzy. This is Nora's best friend who she lost touch with in her root life, and in the different lives is in different places depending on some of Nora's choices. A lot of times she's, doing the thing that she had been doing in Nora's life because, she is her own person and her whole world doesn't revolve around Nora. Nora's not quite that much of a main character. And then the last character I'm going to kind of touch on, because this is going to get a little repetitive, is I'm going to group Nora's family as kind of a whole. So Nora has a mom, a dad, and a brother, and depending on some of Nora's life choices, some of them are alive or dead or experiencing different things, which makes a lot more sense. Obviously, your family would have a lot bigger influence on your life than just a friend. So again, it's really interesting to see how all of the other people in Nora's life change based on her own choices. It just goes to show our influence on other people, even if it's not always a direct, strong influence, it's still there, and the butterfly effect of what you're doing can vastly affect the people around you. So I like that a lot. The next point I want to touch on is the plot. And you would think jumping around from life to life like this would be jarring or it would get boring, but I really enjoyed it. I thought this book was very fast paced. The chapters are really short, which I always enjoy. I love short chapters. And so I think it's very well paced, and she's always jumping from life to life. As soon as she gets disappointed with a life, it pulls her back into the library. So I think that keeps it from getting too monotonous. And then of course, once she gets to one of the last life from the library that she experiences, it does go a little bit longer. Most of the lives only take place over the course of like one chapter. The last life is like a few chapters. And that's one where she has a family and a husband, not with Dan, but with another guy. And I think that's where she learns the most about herself. And so I think it's kind of good because it's pretty quick, it's pretty quick. And then you get to kind of like a slower part. And this is a part where you really should be kind of slowing down, taking in all of these lessons the same way Nora is. So I think it's really well paced for what the author is going for, and I do think I kind of want to read more of Matt Haig because I really did enjoy the writing style of this book. So another point I want to hit on is the setting / the atmosphere. Obviously this takes place over many settings, from London to Norway to Australia to a vineyard in California. And each place is not overtly described, but the feeling, you can feel each place really well. And then of course the library is pretty intimately described because it is the driving force of all of this. And it's all very nice and atmospheric, and it does feel kind of cozy, I guess, because you're really so focused in on one character, being Nora. And her worldview is so small to start with, and you gradually get to see that open up over the course of the book, and it makes you, because it happens so slowly, it like lulls you in to like really, from a very cozy point to a very expansive, very big idea that would feel intimidating, but because you've had this buildup, feels very natural and very comfortable. So concluding thoughts, I'm gonna have a hell of a time editing this video because I feel like I've mostly been babbling on about feelings and ridiculousness, but I think everyone going through a quarter life crisis should read this book. And I would say that's probably most of my generation. I just, like I had kind of touched on before, everybody, no matter where they come from, has made choices. Whether those have been good choices or bad choices, we've all made choices. We all have, maybe not necessarily regrets the same way Nora has regrets, but we at least have what ifs in our brain. And I think this is a really good way to make I think this book does make you feel a lot better about your choices in life. And I think a quote I really enjoyed, I enjoyed a lot of quotes in this actually, but one specifically that I think kind of is the main theme of this book is, you don't have to understand life, you just have to live it. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of us can get so caught up in the what ifs and, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what's best for myself and the people around me? And sometimes you just have to live your life, and you just have to kind of let things play out sometimes and enjoy the time you have. You never know when it's going to end. Oh, that's a really depressing note to end on. This is supposed to be uplifting. I really did find this book very uplifting. I know I'm not very good at verbalizing. I am not a philosopher. I am not an artist. I feel like you really do need that skill set to be able to properly communicate the value of this book. But I would like to say I thought this book was excellent. I think everybody needs to read this. So thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.